Hi, this is Lisa Veress here on Military Masterminds. I'm introducing my first interview with Fran Racioppi. He's with FR6. It's a company that he began. And I want to go into a detail a little bit about this channel. And it's to bring attention to the elite soldier and what they bring to the workforce. I'm excited to have you. And you know that the whole goal of this channel is to enlighten people and make companies more aware of veterans. I mean, all veterans and their value that they can add. Because I know we talked a little bit before this that you guys just really don't have, I don't want to say you don't have a good way, but you just don't market yourselves as much as maybe some of the other branches do.
I think you're right. I think that we have not done in the Army, Special Forces, and the Green Beret community the best job that we could have in promoting ourselves. I have to take a second and put a knock on my brothers in the SEALs, but they do the best job. They do the best job there when they're in the military. And I joke that every SEAL who gets out writes a book. But you know what? They do a great job of getting the world, and especially corporate America, to understand what they do, what they've done in the military, and how their skills transfer over into the corporate sector. And one of our and our being Green Berets and Army Special Forces, one of the greatest gifts that we have is our tagline of the quiet professionals, and that allows us to be extremely effective in covert and clandestine operations all over the world. But it doesn't help us when we get out into the corporate world, where you have to be able to translate what you've done and what you've personally done and be able to talk about it and want to talk about it. And so that part of the transition process is really, really difficult for a lot of people. And I still, 3, 4 years after now, 4 years, I still struggle with that.
Yeah, and to narrow down what you want to do because you guys can do anything if you're given a task.
That also becomes a problem. I know that when I was getting ready to transition out in late 2015, and then I transitioned out in early 2016, I was having a lot of conversations with a lot of different companies. And I was really excited about the next chapter in my life. And I realized that when I was in the military, when I was in special forces, there really wasn't a job description. I knew I had a role. I knew I had a role on my team. I knew I had a role in the organization. But so many times the job was just to go somewhere and make it better, do a good job, figure out what the problems are, solve them, and make it better than when you got there. And when you go into the corporate world, it's really easy to take that mindset and start telling potential employees or employers or even people who are going to want to help you that same thing. And you kind of come across as confused, or you lack focus, you lack direction. I know that for me, I had been speaking.
So in this next section, the audio is cutting in and out, and Fran begins telling a story about his decision-making process and how he decides what he wants to do when he gets out of the military. He's confiding in a friend right now, and he's telling that story. Here we go.
Who was about 15, 20 years older than me during my transition. And we had a series of great conversations. And every time I went back to him, he'd say, okay, what do you think you want to do? And I kept telling him that I wanted to do 5 or 6 different roles in his company. I would do them in 7 or 8 different cities in the country. And eventually he looked at me and he said, I can't help you. And I was confused. And I said, well, I don't understand. Why can't you help me? I mean, I can do all these things. I can go all these places. And he said, because I can call up any of my peers and I can get you an interview. But you've told me that you want 5 jobs in 8 different cities. I don't know who to call. And so we have to do a better job of understanding what our value is, understanding what we want to do and what makes us happy, and then translating that out and being comfortable if it's only 1 or 2 things. And we don't have to be someone who's really good at everything all the time now. You just have to know a lot about a few things and you can be okay.
Mm-hmm. And I know we jumped ahead rather quickly, but we'll go back to that in a minute. Let's talk about how you started out. Like, do you want to talk about your background, like when you started in the military and how you
Sure.
progressed, just so everyone kind of has
Yeah, sure.
a good background.
Sure. So I went to undergraduate at Boston University. I was a 4-year member of the men's rowing team. Um, I I had every intention of being a journalist. That was what I studied. I wanted to be the next Tom Brokaw. 9/11 happened my junior year, and I'm not a 9/11 military guy. And what I mean by that is when 9/11 happened, I didn't look and say, I'm going to answer the call and join the Army. I actually want to be a war correspondent. And throughout my junior and senior year, as I prepared myself and studied to be a war correspondent when I graduated, I watched these guys with long hair and beards riding horses and really making a difference in the conflicts in Afghanistan and then eventually Iraq. And I said, wait a second, I can't go be a war correspondent. I need to go be one of these guys. I need to go be a Green Beret in the U.S. Army. And so I
So you
applied.
knew about them.
I did, yeah, because as we were, embedded journalism changed the face of journalism throughout 2001 into 2003, and it was the first time where you truly had live television on the battlefield. And that was really, really cool to see and get a firsthand look of what it looks like to be in some of those situations, albeit from a journalist perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went to officer candidate school. I selected infantry. I was granted infantry. I spent a couple of years as an infantry officer in 4th ID out of Fort Carson. I deployed for a year to Iraq in 2005, 2006. I came back, my window for selection opened up. I went to selection in mid 2007. Thankfully, I made it. And then I went into 10th group. And I spent the remainder of my career in 10th group. I spent a few years as a detachment commander. I then was I was the J S-35 for the first second battalion. I had a chance to go to Africa for 6 months and serve as the J-35.
That's how
That
you and
ran
my
all the
husband
partnership.
crossed paths.
Mhm. Yep. So yeah, we
Okay.
served together in 10th group in second battalion. And so I then went to Africa in Djibouti for 6 months, where I had a great opportunity to run all of the partner programs with units that were or were trying to become uh, their country's version of special forces.
Uh-huh.
And that was really cool to see how they did it and really learn from them and then help them on their journey to become a more competent military. I came back from that and I was the 10th Special Forces Group Assistant Operations Officer at the group level for a year. That was a great experience running a 3,000 person Special Forces group across 4 continents. And then I went to West Africa and I was afforded the opportunity to run the same partnership programs that I ran in East Africa, only this time in West Africa. And then I found that I opened my mouth one too many times in a series of meetings, and I found myself as General Jim Linder's aide. And I spent the rest of my time in the military with General Linder when he was the 2-star commander of Special Operations Command Africa. A really, truly amazing mentor. Amazing experience that I had there, and forever grateful for his leadership and the knowledge that he passed on to me. And then I came back, and it was time to get out. My 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 run had ended, and I decided to go to New York. The Army had prepared me for every time I was promoted or every time I was given a new job, they sent me to a school. I was very fortunate in the military to get to go to a lot of different schools. And I said, the civilian world is no different. I know a lot about a lot of things, but I know nothing about running a business and I know nothing about finance. So I need to go fill that knowledge gap and try to catch up with my peers who went directly into business from undergrad. And so I applied to and subsequently luckily got into NYU Stern School of Business in New York, and I received my MBA from 2015 to 2017 at NYU. I worked at Merrill Lynch concurrently as a financial advisor. Had a great opportunity to work with a very knowledgeable and very experienced team led by a guy named Rick Nelson, who will forever be a close friend and mentor to me. And gave me a really great opportunity to go there and learn a lot about the financial industry and time that very MBA. From there, I was offered the opportunity right around when I was graduating in summer 2017 to go be the director of global security at Snapchat. They had just gone public. They were looking for someone to come in and kind of lead their global security operation as it scaled globally, kind of consolidated massively their footprint in California, and then also
Did you
professional.
make that connection through another military connection or
I did,
a
yes.
veteran?
The
Okay.
head of recruiting and HR was also had served in special operations units, and he was there leading their recruiting efforts. And we had a mutual friend who connected us, and then they recruited me into there. And so I spent about a year and a half running security there and building a great program with a great group of leaders under me in that organization, really changing the organization for the better and making an impact on the global security industry. I was recognized shortly before I left there by the Department of Homeland Security and FBI for innovation and leadership in the private sector security industry. From there, I went to a company called Genius Fund, and I initially ran security. I was quickly promoted to chief operating officer and then to the CEO earlier this year. And then due to a whole lot of issues with funding and investment, the company has closed.
So I notice a trend in that you are, I don't know if it happens quickly, but you are ascended to leadership roles rather quickly. So I know those are some strong traits. How do you balance that? Because you have to use a lot of diplomacy because civilian life is so much different, or the private sector is so much different than the military. You can't just push some of your initiatives probably as quickly as you want to. What skills do you think you have that caused that ascension to happen?
So being a Green Beret, being in the military, being in special forces, you have an innate ability to lead. You have an innate ability to understand the complexity of the situation that you're in. Soft truth, understand your operational environment, and then quickly adapt to it and find a path to identify the best solutions for an organization, and then gather the support that you need to push those initiatives forward. I won't say that I've done it the best. I won't even say that I've done it well the whole time that I've been out, because I haven't. That's you gotta own your past, and you got to move towards the future. And unfortunately, I have made some mistakes in the roles that I've had in trying to push my agenda too fast and too much, and that has kind of backfired on me, and that's unfortunate. But that's something
But you learn from it,
you
obviously.
learn from it and you move
Yeah.
on. You're taught that even if the answer is no, well, you find a path to yes,
Mm-hmm.
and you find a path to yes at all costs if that's the best thing for the mission. It doesn't work like that in the corporate world. There you still have a boss. You still have shareholders. You still have people that you answer to who may have been there longer and may have a different perspective than you, and you can gather a tremendous amount of support, and you can have everything that seemingly is in your favor. But ultimately, if the boss isn't on your side, you're not going to get there, and you have to understand when to seize opportunity, when to step back and say, it's okay if we don't do that right now. I've advised on it. I've given my opinion, and it's okay if we just sit back and readdress it at a later date, because that's what the boss wants to do, and that's how the corporate world works. And you gotta get comfortable with that, or you're gonna learn some very hard lessons, as I have.
And that's okay. No one's perfect.
You got to move on.
Yeah. And something else, as I'm listening to you, it sounds like you did just a lot of thinking about what you had accomplished, and you had an idea of where you wanted to go going into business school. You sort of did a gap analysis to say, like, here are my strengths. What am I lacking in where I want to go? So that was something that you did prior to getting out. It seemed effortless as you're talking about it, but I know it wasn't.
I wish it was effortless. It was certainly not effortless. I will say that while I was getting ready to get out, and I was applying to different jobs, and I was looking at the large consulting firms and talking to, uh, the big four and McKinsey and folks at Bain, and even some of the smaller, because I thought that I have to go be a consultant. That's what I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Or even just applying to roles in different companies. The conversations were great about organization, about how do you lead, how do you project manage, but when it started to come to things like a profit and loss, and running a P&L, or
Mm-hmm.
talking about a balance sheet or an income statement, or marketing, those things were lost on me. You don't have those sets of what I call hard skills. The military separates soft skills and the hard skills, and it's the same way in the corporate world. Uh, you come out of the military very, very keenly aware of your soft skills, and you have a set of hard skills, but sometimes they're technical, sometimes they're not applicable, depending on what you want to do in the corporate sector. And for me, leading divisions of companies, starting my own company, you have to understand finance, and you have to understand investment, and that was critical for me to fill that gap.
Let's jump into FR6. And how did you decide to start your own company? What was the motivation behind that?
Well, to be honest with you, even while the whole time most of the time I was in business school, I never thought about starting my own company. And then about halfway through, I was asked to go back to Boston University and talk to the men's rowing team. And I sat there and I said, "Well, what am I going to talk about? I don't know." And the coach, Tom Borer, said, "Well, I don't know. Tell us a couple of things that are important to you, that you learned, while you were rowing." And I said, "Okay, that's a good idea." And so I put together a talk. That talk has now come to be known as the discipline to prepare. I talked about 3 different events that occurred during my time in the military that I believe were a testament to success, because of the discipline that I had and that had been instilled in me uh, by rowing, and by my 4 years at Boston University on the rowing team. And so, I've subsequently gone on and have been successful in other things that I've done because of lessons learned while in the military. And for me, life is about chapters, and you have these chapters that you start, and they often have very concrete starts, and they have very finite ends. Whether that a lot of time that's event driven, or it's periods of your life, and these chapters mold you and they shape you. And so, what FR6 does is it starts to unlock what those chapters are. I use it to tell my story, and my story from my periods in the military, things that I've learned, things that I've done subsequently in the private sector, and I talk about um, operational resilience. I talk about personal resilience, or I talk about preparation and the importance of individual preparation, the importance of understanding and mentally preparing yourself for the things that you can and cannot control.
Mm-hmm.
talk about understanding your place in organizations and the importance that that plays to anyone going into a new organization or trying to make their team better. Where do you fit in, and how do you bring value, and what does everybody else bring value to that organization? And talk about the importance of team planning and understanding all that can happen to you in building essentially business continuity and crisis management plans. And so I tie that also into a bit of security sector expertise from my time in the military and my previous roles, and then general leadership development coaching.
So you have teams that go in.
It's me.
It's you. You're the
Just
team.
me.
Are you basically, I mean, do you stay in New York, or are you
No,
expanding?
no, I pretty much go wherever I need to go. I spent the last couple of years working for companies and kind of doing some side projects. But as I worked for companies, that was in LA, and now the next phase is upon me. I'm not sure, where that will bring. FR6 still sits as its own entity, so I'm not
Okay.
sure if I'll pursue that full time. Or if I'll continue to do that on the side and pursue another full-time role. There's a lot of opportunity out there. The world is in a very interesting place. There's
That
a
is.
hard reset for a lot of folks, and that includes myself. I lost my job during this time of upheaval as well, and so
I didn't know that.
we have to reassess the situations that we're in. We have to find our resilience. We have to understand how have we been successful in the past, what has made me successful to this point, and the various things that I've done. You have to hone in on that, focus it, use it as to channel energy, and move forward.
And I have to share with you, Arthur said that you're a guy with a lot of charisma.
Thanks. You can't quit. You got to be out there. You got to talk to people. You got to get to know people. You got to understand what motivates them.
Mm-hmm. So the COVID motivated you to start FR6?
No, I started that a few years ago, about
Okay.
halfway through business school, as I started to pursue public speaking and leadership development.
Okay. So think back when you were thinking about transitioning out of the military.
Yep.
What were there any tools? Do you have access to any tools that was offered from the military or other places that you found helpful? You guys are just an elite class of your own, and you're such a different type of person that I don't think those general avenues were really of value.
There are a lot of organizations out there that cover the entire spectrum. It is very difficult coming out of the military to assess and understand which is which. What I believe we need to do as a Green Beret Special Forces community is embrace those who are coming out of the military. There are some groups that have been set up who do this, and there's some that work kind of even across all of SOF, who work, whether you're a SEAL, whether you're coming out of MARSOC, whether you're coming out of Army SF, it doesn't matter. They'll work with you. So there are groups that do that. What we tend to do as former SF guys is put it in the box of they'll figure it out, and that person that I may have known, that I worked with, that I deployed with, that I watched be wildly successful in the military, always just figured it out, and they never kind of had to ask for help. And so you run into this hamster wheel where folks coming out are not genuinely really comfortable asking for help because they never had to, always figured it out. And people who are out are looking back saying, oh, well, they've always figured it out. They'll figure it out. I think we got to close that. We got to close that gap. We have to close that circle. We have to tighten it up. One of the things that I've done in my previous roles in the corporate sector is I've brought in transitioning folks for a day, for 2 days. And I've said, listen, I totally get that you may have no idea what you want to do. I had no idea what I wanted to do. And some days I wake up and I still don't know what I want to do. And I've been out for 4 years and held a couple of jobs, and that's okay. But the only way you're going to learn what that is you got to go see what people are doing. And so I've been a very big proponent of having folks into the organization and set up a day, set up 2 days where somebody comes in and they meet with different people in the company, different departments. They meet with different people. If you happen to lead a team, they meet with different people on your team, and they learn about what companies do, how do they operate. And yeah, sure, every company is different. Every department within a company is different. And so there's a lot of variables at play, but educating people who are coming out by giving them a glimpse into what it actually looks like on the outside, and starting to help them to focus and narrow down what it is that they want to actually do, I think is a hugely impactful way to give back to those folks who are getting ready to take that leap. Yeah, I mean, it's very hard. You go through, you go. It's an iterative process.
Mm-hmm.
That yeah. First, I mean, you said, do guys have LinkedIn? Oh, I didn't have LinkedIn when I was in, but that was like the first thing I did when I decided to get out, and that was a huge jump. And you go through this kind of iterative process where you say, okay, I'm going to start putting myself out there, and then you might put your job title and your name. You're like, oh my
You're
God,
always told not to.
somebody knows my job title and my name. Oh no. And then that lasts for a little bit, and you realize, well, it doesn't really say anything. And then you kind of start to have to unpack that a little bit and describe, okay, what it is that you did. Right? Like, there will be a period of time where resumes will be full of we and my team, and that's super important, because that shows teamwork, that shows an ability to work with others, that shows an ability to be part of something greater than yourself. But what it doesn't do is show what you did, and what employers want to see is what you did. And so as your iterative process goes by, things like your LinkedIn profile, your resume, your ability to talk about achievements will start to evolve and transition from very vague explanations to things full of we and us and them, to detailed explanations of what you did, obviously unclassified, and then explanations of exactly how you present you participated, or you impacted certain experiences that you had that you want to tell about in job interviews. And so you got to go through that process. The faster, the better. Or you'll.
Somebody help you, or did you just kind of? It just came to you, and it was a realization.
I think it's a combination of reaching out to people and having conversations and getting their feedback, reaching out to other people who've gone through the transition, and then also we're stubborn, and you're type A personality, and you think you know it, and you think you're going to figure it out, and you think that nobody's had to go through this before, and even if they had, they probably did it wrong, because I'm going to be different, and I'm going to do it my way, and then you have the failure. And you learn more from failures than you do from successes. And as you continue to be declined for job opportunities, or not granted interviews for things that you're highly qualified for, you got to start to figure out, well, what was wrong, what I do wrong, where did I not highlight certain things, and then you start to see it for yourself. So it's a combination of people advising you on that, and then also learning at the hard way.
So thanks for joining us for the first interview here in Military Masterminds. We hope to bring you many more. This was just part 1 of the interview with Fran. We'll be talking to him in part 2. The video will probably drop around July, the first week of July or so. So I hope you'll subscribe and click on notifications so that you don't miss it. Thanks for joining us.